think skills are extremely important. I'm teaching my son this now and my daughter this because skills are very important. And what happened, I think, is a lot of people went to college and graduated with no skills. That's scary. Yeah. Welcome back to the Crucial Combo podcast. Of course, you are tuned in with your boy, Coach Joe. I hope everybody's doing good. We're going to get into this today. I want to talk about AI. And, I've been catching, these videos talking about AI. Everybody's talking about where it is now, where it's going, unemployment rates. And I'm thinking about all this because, I have kids. My wife and I have kids. We have 10-year-old, almost a 10-year-old and almost a 9-year-old. So, our kids are not at a point now where they're going to be working in the real world yet. But, I think about their future because we're not far off from that. Anybody who's raising kids knows that, man, before you blink, your kids are ready to go to college or go off to trade school or military or go into the workforce, whatever they're going to do. So, I've been thinking about lately, just kind of thinking about how the world has been changing the past 20 years. When I think back to when I first entered the workforce, which was about 25 years ago, around the turn of the century when I first entered the workforce. And I just think about all the things that I was doing, what I went to school for, what I got into as far as work early on and how things have changed. So I want to go into this first video. They're talking about recent college grads, and I kind of want to just go into this video real quick and kind of open up the show talking about that.
The unemployment rate for new college grads has recently surged, and some economists say businesses are now replacing entry-level jobs with artificial intelligence. Here's CBS's Ali Bauman.
Front gate.
22-year-old Michael Macaluso just earned his degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Connecticut.
Feel good?
But this summer, he's back helping manage his hometown pool. He hasn't found a job in his field despite applying for nearly 200 positions.
Did you have any expectations about what the job market would be like when you graduated?
I was told by a lot of people that I was going to get a job right out of college. And then all of a sudden, there's no jobs.
New research finds now, for the first time ever, the unemployment rate among recent college graduates has exceeded the national unemployment rate, ballooning to 6.6% over the past 12 months.
Before we go forward, that's something to take a look at, So just in case you didn't catch that in the back, unemployment rates for new college graduates has exceeded the national rate. So 6.5% for college graduates. And it's something to really think about because a lot of the people everybody who goes to school, you're kind of told, like, go to school, you have a better chance to get in a job. And the job market, not only has it changed over the last 15 to 20 years, but it's also changing so rapidly. And you really don't know, the job that you're trying to apply for, that you said I'm going to school for. You don't know if that could have changed from the time you were a freshman to the time you graduated. That's how rapidly the job market is changing.
Oxford Economics' Matthew Martin.
This is kind of goes against what you would expect. Those with higher educational attainment usually have better employment prospects than those with less educational attainment.
Martin's team believes companies are eliminating formative entry-level jobs, the work handed over to artificial intelligence. Tech companies are leading the way.
AI is permeating every aspect of our lives.
Nariman Farvardin, the president of Stevens Institute of Technology, says his school has been preparing for the AI revolution for the last 10 years. He expects disruption throughout the workforce will be bigger than the disturbance brought on by the introduction of the internet, and it could last up to 15 years.
I think AI has the potential to either augment or maybe totally replace jobs that are physically or cognitively repetitive.
That makes me think about myself. Like when the first like real job, I would say, I worked as a teenager. I've been working since I was like 14. So I had fast food jobs, but the first job I had in the office was in an investment bank. We were basically at the time like doing, trade processing, whether you're working in a retail bank where they take cash and do deposits, or you're working in an investment bank where you're not dealing with money, but you're dealing with papers, whether it be equity stocks, or at the time it was mortgage-backed securities I worked in. And, we were just basically processing. A lot of those jobs now are not there because these are things, when it comes to anything that's repetitive, data entry, that type of stuff, those jobs are gone. And a lot of those jobs, used to pay really well. I knew a lot of people who worked in those fields. And, you can make a good living, working in investment banks, insurance, those financial jobs that are boring, repetitive, very white collar, quote unquote. But the processing in that stuff, humans had to do it. Of course, we use computers, but AI now is taking a lot of those jobs. So I kind of think about that, first and foremost. And when I look at college graduates now, you have a lot of people now who are getting into the tech field. I have a few friends who've gotten into the tech field lately. And I know a lot of younger people who are getting into the tech field. All of this makes me think about like where America is going and who's really needed. Because what's going to happen, I think, in the next, 10 to 15 years, people who are creating, from what I see, people who are creating things in AI, whether it be apps, programs, whatever it is, that are using AI, if you're creating these things which are making it easier for people to do their work, you're going to make money. You're not going to have a problem because that's a service people want. So we're kind of in an interesting time in America because I think people want the service of AI. You want to use AI, but you also feel uncomfortable when AI is taking your job and taking the task away from what you get paid for. So it's a very interesting dynamic because, as Americans, we want to work. We want to make our money, those of us who want to work, but we also love convenience. And anything that's going to make our lives easier, damn it, we love it in America. And the rest of the world loves it too. But, so what I see going forward, I kind of see, and I talked about this in another video, I see kind of a reversion back to blue collar work. So what I'm seeing is I see a lot of kids who are in their 20s, let's say, for instance, kids who are getting into construction, kids who are getting into, being electrician, plumber, welder. I'm seeing these positions that are these jobs that people didn't really look 25 years ago. It wasn't, if you went into, and again, this might be just my perception, but if you went into welding or plumbing or being an electrician, it was kind of like, oh, okay, well, you couldn't really hack it out in college, or you weren't seen as quote unquote intellectual to go get your degree. You went into something blue collar. I think that's how things were viewed, right? So, back 20, 25 years ago, it was kind of like, it was more luxurious to, have a white collar in and go work in a office, because it was perceived as something that was a little bit more, intellectual, a little bit more high echelon. You don't want to be blue collar unless you have to. And again, these are all perceptions, but what we see now is that a lot of those jobs in the blue collar sector haven't really changed. Of course, I'm sure there's things as far as technology that has changed those jobs, but they haven't changed them into the effect of where, listen, I've had, owning a home, I've had sewer line issues. I had sewer line issues first couple years of having my house. And listen, the plumbers who pop in, listen, they get about $200 just to pop in, just to come through the door, not to mention whatever they're going to do. So, and man, when you need a plumber, or you need an electrician, or you need certain aspects of a construction, or welders, whatever it is, those particular fields, when you need it, you need it. And no AI is going to come in and do those jobs. So I just find that interesting. But, you see those type of jobs that haven't really changed. Now, doctors are not going anywhere. Lawyers are not going anywhere. But as far as, if you want to get a simple contract written up, or you want to look up something legally, I mean, man, I'm telling you, Chat GTP, Google in general, you can find different contracts. You can find, and I'm not saying that it's a total replacement for a lawyer. Some situations you definitely need a lawyer, but there's a lot of information, the general outline of a contract if you need something from a lawyer. So you don't necessarily need a lawyer to just totally draw something up from scratch, is what I'm saying. So I think, that's something that has changed a lot. Another thing I think is interesting is a pilot. We have these self-driving Ubers. I haven't done one yet. I don't think I'm going to do one, but never say never. But I don't know. I think at some point we're going to have a self-flying plane, which I think is already possible. But will people get on a self-flying plane? I don't know. I probably wouldn't. I'll probably be dead and gone by the time. Maybe my kids will try something like that. But I'm not trusting a plane that doesn't have a pilot in it. And it's already nervous. It's already a nervous enough situation to fly. But to have nobody in the pilot seat flying the plane and AI just flying the plane is, or essentially autopilot, I guess, flying the plane is something I'm not ready for. But pilots, I don't think are going anywhere. I think pilots will definitely be something that'll be there. And in relation to navigation or aviation, I think the ATC, air traffic controllers, that's another position that I don't think AI is ever going to take over, because again, that's about as scary as getting into a flight with no pilot. So I think air traffic controllers, it's all about at this point, what jobs are really needed, because if you are not needed and there's something that AI can take over, you're in trouble.
Major companies like Microsoft, Walmart, and Business Insider are laying off employees amid the rise of artificial intelligence in the workplace. And business reporter at Axios, Nathan Bomey's here for more on that. Nathan, thanks so much for coming on. Our team has tracked down some spikes in AI-related questions being asked on search engines. And so we wanted to bring you on to get your take and to be able to give responses to some of that. One of the big questions is what jobs you think will be first to go and what layoffs you've seen so far because of AI.
Well, just this week, for example, Procter & Gamble is saying that it'll cut up to 7,000 jobs. Although they did not use the word AI, they used the word digitization and automation. So I think that sounds like AI, because the positions that are at most risk are going to be positions that involve a lot of repeatable actions, data entry, data analysis, anything that requires you to sort through all sorts of documents at scale. That's something that AI can do really easily.
Is there a such thing as an AI-proof job?
I think that the most AI-proof jobs are going to be jobs that involve a lot of human interaction, because at the end of the day, AI can't really replace those interpersonal aspects of humanity. So just chatting with other people and trying to coordinate, trying to innovate together, those are the actions that I think AI won't really be able to replace. But if it simply involves just rote memorization or the sort of communication that involves really basic words and phrases, those are the kinds of things that AI can do very easily.
What it makes me think about is like, listen, I've had a lot of different jobs throughout my life. And, I had situations, again, I worked in banking for a long time and stuff like that. And, I think that there are certain jobs where you could do certain jobs kind of, have mentally not being there. You know what I mean? Just kind of like mentally not being there, halfway asleep. And there's certain jobs where you could just go in and type whatever you need to type and do these tasks. I think all of those jobs are going away. They are extremely, extremely on the chopping block of going away. So not only have specific skill, but you have to have a specific area where, like he said, I think human interaction. So I think the job market's getting turned on its head a little bit. So what's interesting is that there's things like salesmen. Salesmen aren't going away. If you can sell, the engine for everything is really sales at the end of the day. Most people don't like sales. I've done certain aspects of sales in my life, and sales is one of those things that you can't really replace sales, because people purchase products and services, and there's certain products and services that people purchase on their own, right? And there's certain products and services that are sold to people, right? Meaning that somebody is pitching it to you to sell it. So I think in those situations, those type of jobs are not going anywhere. because they're just organically part of human interaction. We could talk about also like counselors. I think counselors aren't going anywhere because there's a human need for counselors. There's a human need for therapists, whether it be physical therapists, OTs, occupational therapists, all parts of medical that the physical interaction between humans is not going anywhere. What it makes me think about is this, right? I think about America. We need to work on producing things. Like I said, I'm thinking about my kids. I'm not thinking about me at this point. I'm a man of a certain age, and it's not over for me, but I'm a man of a certain age, right? So I'm not at a point in my life where I'm sitting here worried about what I'm going to do in 20 or 30 years. I'll be retired in 20, 30 years, hopefully. but I'm thinking about my kids at this point, and I'm like, we all want our kids to just be happy. We all want our kids to be prepared. At least that's what I want. I want my kids to be prepared, and being prepared is really kind of looking at the world and saying, okay, well, you want to be able to provide for yourself. You want to be able to have a livelihood. You want to be able to have meaning, right? And, when I think about that, I said, okay, what's really changed? What's really changed for the young people? I think what's changed in 2025, when I look at the fact they're talking about these college graduates coming out and not being able to find jobs, I think what's changed is that humans, we've kind of gotten to the point where we don't really produce anything anymore. There's another podcast that I watch, called Dad Saves America, which is really good. And he had a guest on there talking about, how we live, how Americans, how we live, and how we are kind of like, we're always talking about the cost of living and how bad things are and how tough it is to survive. And I think there's aspects to that. We have this whole conversation going on with where we're at politically with Trump, Mandami, potentially being the mayor of New York, and whether we need to be more socialist, whether we need to be, lean harder into our capitalism. All those are ripe for conversation. 100 years ago, the way we live now, like just having air conditioning in our house, and our houses are so big. My house is way bigger than the house I grew up in. I grew up with my mom, my dad, my two sisters, five people in the house. Our house was a lot smaller than the house I have now. So I'm extremely grateful for what I have right now, but we live better and better and better, and we require a whole lot more. But my point is, Americans, what scares me is we're not producing anything. We don't produce a lot. And it made me kind of think about like skills. What I'm thinking about with my kids, what skills do you want to have? And what I mean by skills is not just the college degree. I think that, and again, I went to college. I swallowed the whole college spiel. And, there's nothing wrong with going to college. I think that it's important to realize that college is just one aspect of how you move forward in the world. It's not the be all end all. And if you're not, and again, I'm going back to the particular career, even if you're in a particular career now, AI is still at your front door. So it makes me think about, like, what do I want my kids to do and what skills do I want them to have? Now, they're going to decide what they want to do. But I think having skills, knowing how to do things, knowing how to fix things, knowing how to create things, knowing how to produce things is important. And the fact that we aren't producing many things in this country, we are extreme service-based society, has really kind of made me worry a little bit. All the cushy jobs and all the tech, we've gotten to a point where we've created something that's AI, which I think is a beautiful thing. We've created something that can do so many tasks that now make a lot of people, I wouldn't say worthless, but it makes a lot of people question what is your purpose on this earth? What do we need to do? So that had me thinking about Khalees, right? I saw a video with Khalees. I've been following Khalees for a while, and she's been, she's on my my Instagram feed. And, I see her in Africa. I see her, farming. And I think it's cool because farming is not something most people know how to do. Just even know how to grow basic stuff, grow a tomato, grow an onion. Most people don't really know how to do a lot of that stuff. When you think about how life used to be 100 years ago, just 100 years ago, If you didn't know how to farm, you didn't know how to, farm, you died. And a lot of places is like that. If you can't plant your food, you die. It's just that simple. And I tell my kids all the time, like, you guys don't, I'm fortunate, you're fortunate, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to actually grow your food and work the land and all that stuff. We go to the grocery store. You know what I'm saying? And 100 years ago, you didn't just run to the grocery store. You had to grow your food, and a lot of places are still like that. So let me play this clip from, I want to play this clip from Khalees just real quick, because it made me think about, she bought a 300-acre farm in Kenya. And I thought it was cool because where are we going next? Are we going to have to learn how to grow food? No, I don't think we're going there, because AI, and technology's already done all that for us. But we're going to have to go back to the basics. I think that I don't know what human beings are going to do. There's a lot of human beings. This is I think it will be some level of a bloodbath.
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of people, especially where we're from, are ignorant to is how profitable farming can be. Oh. Right? You said we went to a tea farm, we got to see your farm, and we broke down the onion thing. Talk about that and why people should really be looking at this as a business opportunity.
Oh, man. I mean, like, when you think about, I knew it had to be profitable because you see it and you're like, these guys are doing it because it's making money, but I couldn't really wrap my brain around it. But my lawyer, again, who's been super helpful, he's a farmer, and he was like, I make way more money farming. It's like, this is surefire. So he started to break it down for me when I started to understand, okay, it's like, this is something that, especially here, because I think I think here, like, there's so much agriculture, like, opportunities here. And I feel like the younger people are not doing it as much that they need it, right? And so, like, for example, the reason I decided to do onions is because a lot of, they were getting, like a year ago, they were getting a lot of the onions from Tanzania. And then recently they kind of banned the onions from Tanzania. So it's like, they need onion farmers here. I was like, I can do that, right? So things like that. But for example, like, after your cost, right? If you put in 5 acres of onions, right? And with everything, so you got with the exception of the borehole, which will make your money back within the year. But say, like, just all of your drip lines and all of that stuff, right? For 5 acres, once you spend all that, which is like, say $11,000, you can make between, let's say, 30 conservatively to like $35,000 within, let's say, a quarter, right? So at minimum, you have 2 harvests a year for only 5 acres. That's you can live on that, right? Like, it's a good living. And then say you add another 5 acres, like, so it is actually extremely profitable. They're looking for farmers. They want people to farm. It's such a good opportunity. Especially Kenya. Kenya has so much flat land, and it's great soil. This is Africa. It's like you throw a seed in the ground and stuff just grows.
The soil is so much better than it is here. I play that clip not to say that everybody's going to be farming. I don't think that, Americans are going to just start farming at large and that's going to solve the problem. But it makes me think about the basics of humanity, the basics of what we were and where we're going. I think humanity man has created so much over the last 100 years, even over the last 50 years. And I think it's impressive the things that men have been able to do. But life is like a game of musical chairs, right? You got to get in where you fit in. And there's no guarantee. Even having kids, like, I can't sit here and be like, tell my kids, like, listen, if you got to go to college, and you got to go to college so you can get a job. This is the bullshit they told everybody that's my age, is that you got to go to college so you can get a good job. And there was no context there. And I'm not mad at that, because at the time, the context, a lot of people who were saying that didn't know the context, right? But there was context there, meaning that, what are you going to school for? What are you planning to do? And whatever you're going to school for, can you do it for the next 25, 30 years, right? And if you can't do it for the next 25, 30 years and retire, are you planning your pivot? Are you planning your changes? Because you have to pivot. No one even has a choice. Most people, like I said, if you go through a lot of these fields, you don't have a choice but to pivot. The job force is going to make you pivot in 2 to 3 years, every 2 to 3 years, because it changes, right? So, like, if you're anything is customer service, CSR, customer service representatives, dead meat, right? Dead meat. There was a time where you would call companies and talk to someone and be able to explain. Now, try to call a bank, try to call phone company, try to call electric company, try to talk to somebody is very hard. It takes a long time, and maybe you might talk to somebody who's in this country, right? So that's another thing. So even what's interesting is they talked about accountants. Even accountants aren't safe because going through data, mining through data, and doing certain types of work, bookkeepers, accountants are in trouble. I mean, think about the fact that, like even TurboTax, just a mild example, like even when you file your taxes, I mean, for the most part, TurboTax is AI. TurboTax, you putting in information and there's something automated to go through and crunch the numbers and give you your tax return. Now, sure, an accountant or a bookkeeper can kind of go through and do a little bit more deep dive in and give you certain in-depth, deep advice. But for the most part, TurboTax is AI. Even to an extent when you talk about even journalists. I mean, the AI that's being done for journalism is crazy work. I'm not talking about the journalists who are on, in person on TV, just people who are writing, writers who are journalists who contribute to websites and stuff like that. AI is creating this stuff so quickly that those jobs are becoming gone. Even roles in translation. If you're like a translator, that's cooked. There was a time where you could be a translator. You used to be able to make money doing that. Translator now you use Google Translate. You can put the device up, speak into it, it'll speak out the other language. So we've come a long way. We've come a long, long way. And where we're going is very interesting. Ask yourself, what do I know how to do? Do I have any skill? Now, I call myself, I'm like a jack of all trades, master of none. Because I know how to do a lot of different things. And not because I worked in all those fields, but I always pride myself to learn how to do things, right? So anybody who knows me knows I was a producer, music producer, sound engineer. I know how to sound engineer. I can shoot video. I can do editing. I can fix cars. I can cut hair. I can do light construction work. You know what I'm saying? Even a little bit of plumbing I can do, right? Not that anybody would hire me to be a plumber, but I can do some things. But what skills do you have? I think skills are extremely important. I'm teaching my son this now and my daughter this because skills are very important. And what happened, I think, is a lot of people went to college and graduated with no skills. That's scary.
According to a study by the World Economic Forum, nearly a quarter of all current professions will change in the next 5 years due to AI.
Half of entry-level white-collar jobs disappearing and 10 to 20% unemployment in the next 1 to 5 years.
The tech sector is already being hit, but this will spread to many other sectors of the labor economy.
Tech has already been hit, and other industries are just months away from massive cuts.
Even the CEOs of the largest AI companies in the United States are warning about the potential consequences.
CEO of an artificial intelligence company warns that AI is about to wipe out millions of jobs in the next few years, even calling it a bloodbath.
The effects of this labor revolution could bring significant consequences, potentially leading to unemployment rates never seen before.
It's not just tech. The CEO of a major AI company says could wipe out half of all the white-collar starter jobs, possibly causing unemployment to soar as high as 20%.
So how could AI eliminate nearly half of all white-collar jobs? The accelerated advancement of artificial intelligence is transforming the global job market in unprecedented ways. What was once limited to repetitive manual tasks or data processing has now evolved into tools capable of executing complex cognitive functions that were historically the responsibility of entry-level administrative workers.
Use cases for AI continue to grow. There is one industry leaning hard into the technology: customer support.
A report by McKinsey & Company estimated that generative AI could automate activities that currently represent between 60 and 70% of the working time in certain office occupations. The most vulnerable positions are those focused on routine information processing, rather than human judgment, empathy, or interpersonal skills. For example, in the customer service area, AI-powered chatbots already handle more than 85% of first-level support requests in large tech companies, up from 30% in 2020. Similarly, law firms are using tools like case text to conduct legal research and draft contracts in.
Think about that for a second. Every time you need some help in any service that you're using, there is a chat box there first. They always encourage that, and you got to go through some trouble to find an 800 number. And like my all my older folks. I mean, I'm talking about my in-laws, my mom, and all the older people, the baby boomers. They hate that shit. They hate it. They hate the fact they can't talk to somebody. And I when I talk to older people, I'm like, it's just they don't. They're the customer service. They're not trying to talk to people half the time. They don't even have people hired to do that anymore. You know what I'm saying? There aren't these big call centers waiting to take your complaint and understand how to help you with anything. Most of the time it's a chat box.
Minutes, tasks that previously took a junior lawyer hours.
At a fraction of the cost of a human lawyer, Router says he is able to use his software to help everyday Americans battle legal issues, such as traffic tickets and evictions. So far, he says his company has helped in more than 1.5 million cases and saved his clients millions of dollars.
A report by the World Economic Forum projected that by 2027, approximately 83 million jobs could be lost globally due to AI and automation. Most concerning is that the majority of eliminated jobs are entry-level or junior roles. Likewise, Goldman Sachs estimated that 300 million full-time jobs could be affected by generative AI, with a greater impact in developed economies due to their reliance on office work. In the US, the report identified that up to 46% of tasks performed by entry-level employees could be automated in the next decade. In concrete terms, if these projections are fulfilled, between 10 and 12 million entry-level office jobs could disappear in the U.S. alone, considering the current size of the administrative workforce.
Again, like I said, I mean, even when you talk about farming, like I said, it's like 2% of America's population are farmers. 2% feed 98% of the people. So we have a ton of people who don't necessarily have life or death skills. When I talk to other people who are in AI, everybody talks about you're going to have to transition and, these jobs will be replaced by people who are working to along AI. And I don't think so. I think that the math don't really math. I don't think that there's not going to be even replacement with the jobs lost with these new jobs. There's just not going to be enough jobs, and it goes to the point of the fact that, like I said, what are human beings producing? What are we producing just in America? What is the purpose? What do we do as humans that is contributing and making someone else's life better? Are we doing things? Are we creating things, doing things that are making people's lives better? And also, there's a whole conversation about what the government should be doing. That's this whole conversation about Zohran Mamdani in New York. There is a question now about whether the government, and I'm talking about America now, whether the government is providing for its citizens correctly, whether things are fair, whether the rich are becoming too rich, right? Whether they are paying their fair share, whether the poor are being manipulated, whether the cost of living will continue to rise. There's all these questions. And I think all of it circles around the ecosystem of work. It all circles around that, right? So there are groups of people who aren't worried. The groups of people who aren't worried are people who, I would say, who are providing services or products that people need that can't be replaced, right? But again, those are a small group of entrepreneurs who do certain things that AI can't really replace, right? Or in the positions that I talked about, the job sectors that I talked about, people can't replace. But the average person works for someone else. The average person works in a position that was created, not necessarily for them, but the position was created and they fit the bill for it, got hired, and they don't know what they're going to do if that job goes away. They have no idea. What are they going to do? But it made me think about, there's a movie I saw called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, right? It's a true story. It's a true story about William Kemkwambi. And it was based on a book. So it's in a village in Africa. Oh, it's in Malawi. It's in Malawi. Okay, so he's from Malawi. Basically, the reason why I bring it up is that I thought the movie was dope because basically the village, they had a drought. The village was not able to get water, and they were facing famine. The villagers were stealing from each other. The government cut down a lot of trees and did this and this and that. But the basics of the story is they had no water, or the water, they weren't able to pump the water out into the crops. So the crops were in drought, meaning they had no food growing. So there was definitely famine. A lot of people were leaving the village. This boy, he was 13 years old, and he had an idea to build a windmill out of this bike. And the windmill was to create the power to pump the water out of the well, to pump the water into the fields for the crops. It was a really good movie. You should check it out. But it made me think about it. My son watched it, and we were all watching it together. And it made me think about like human skill, the basics of what humans want. Humans want to survive and eat. Humans want to breathe. Humans want to take care of their family. The very basics, right? And when we start getting back into the basics, it's about creating things and things that help to produce, and the most basic thing to produce is food, right? It's almost crazy that anywhere in the world people actually starve. But in America, it's like we are so used to convenience that this is going to be a shocker. I think AI is going to be a huge shocker because we're so far removed. And again, rightfully so, because industrialization has provided us that. It's provided us something to get away from just farming and working on the land all day just to eat, just to be tired, to go to sleep and get up and do it again. We are evolved creatures. We doing all kind of stuff. We don't have time to farm. I want to go pick up my food from the grocery store and, then come back and be on my podcast and, do my other jobs that I do and, hang out with my kids and my wife. I mean, we have full dynamic lives compared to what we used to, is the point. But that story made me see, and I told my son, the story made me think about the fact like, yo, this boy, he created something and he created this. This is just to make food so they could survive. Getting into AI is going to knock, I think, millions of people back to the basics of, well, what do I know how to do to survive? And that's the larger thing that I think that politicians and government have to start thinking about, because that's really, in my opinion, that's the impending crisis, if you will, that's coming for America. It's not about rich versus poor. It's not about whether there should be billionaires. There should, in my opinion, I'm okay with capitalism. There should be people who make money based on being rewarded on what they do. But I think that in order to have a robust society, we got to have a productive society. And that's what I think is the most dangerous thing, is that the government has to figure out, how do we provide productive lives for the people who are not rich? Because if you don't have nothing to do, it's not just starving. Mentally, you might starve because you don't have anything to do. That's what I'm most scared about, our population.
What's the difference between artificial intelligence and what people are now predicting, which is artificial general intelligence?
The people use very different definitions, and you can say, when is AI so good that something like a telesales job or telesupport job, that just having the AI do that work, that it's way cheaper and more accurate than humans are? So that's, really looking at the labor substitution piece. Or you can look at the most creative things that humans do, like come up with a new drug that helps with tuberculosis. Look at, okay, is AI just helping humans get this done, or is it eventually replacing humans? Like people talk about writing code. Simple coding tasks, AI today can replace human work. The most complex coding tasks, it's not able to do yet. And people in the field disagree. Is that within the next year or two, or is it more like 10 years away? But AI is improving at a rate that surprises me. Things like this deep research capability. You know, a few times a day, I take some complex question, and just for fun, I see in the AI does an awfully good job gathering all the materials and bringing it, summarizing what I need to know.
Satya Nadella says 30% of Microsoft's code is now being done by AI. That seems inevitably to mean you'll hire fewer coders.
Tech is one of those things where, tech used to be one of those things where you got in, you went into coding. Any part of tech used to be very looked at as very secure and something that was obviously going to go in a direction to get even better if you're in tech. And, I would say it does get better, but you have to be on the right side of where tech is going. If you're on the right side of it, being in tech, then you'll be okay, But again, I do think that the people, even in tech, who are the safest are the ones who are creating something, who are creating an app, creating something that people can use, that people will buy from you, or you can sell to a bigger company. This is where you're going to be secure. You know what I'm saying? Or if you're creating something that's a service that people are using and you're going to retain ownership, then, maybe you can hire people and you can create jobs. But, with Bill Gates saying this, Microsoft, 30% of their coding is AI. So you already know that in time, it'll be 50%, 70%, maybe 90% to the point where, they don't hire as many coders. So every aspect is being affected, even the tech that's creating the AI. You know what I'm saying? So this is something to really think about. So I think that one of the biggest questions over the next 15 years is going to be, what are all these people going to do? What are y'all going to do? Where y'all going to work? What's your purpose? How are you going to sustain yourself? It's probably a bigger crisis than people really understand because, again, when you're living in the moment, you really don't see how serious things are. But this is something I've been looking at again because I'm thinking about my kids and I want them. I would say you have to have multiple skills, right? You have to have multiple skills. And this whole conversation about being an entrepreneur versus having a job, like I said this before in other videos, I think that conversation is stupid. It's stupid because whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're a W-2er, you either gonna work or you're not gonna work. And if you're gonna be successful, you're gonna work hard. If you're gonna make good money, you're probably gonna work hard unless you're just really lucky and you get, But no, most of the time, if you are successful financially, you're gonna work hard. Whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a W-2, and in most cases, if you're an entrepreneur, your ass is gonna work a lot harder anyway. So, but I think the question is, what are people going to do? So if you have a passion and there's something you want to do, you're going to get into it. You're going to figure it out. You're going to work on it, whether you're getting paid or not. You're going to dig into that and do that. But for the average person, that's what we have to figure out. Where are these people going to work? Where are they going to fit in society? And I would say that's one of the most pressing things over the next 10 to 15 years. So we'll see where this goes. I'm really curious to see how human beings are going to, in America, for instance, are going to revert back to some basic things, because I think this is what's going to happen. The tech is going to set people backwards in a way. And I think the tech is going to take people back to what do I know how to do? Because when I see a lot of entrepreneurs are, most entrepreneurs are small. Most entrepreneurs don't employ many people, 2, 3 people, 4 people at the most. But people are going way back to a lot of things. I saw a report, and I'm not going to get into that, but I saw a report about 300,000 black women have left the workforce or got pushed out of the workforce since Trump has been in, and they've done all these government cuts because, black women make up about, I think, 12% of government workforce, if I'm not mistaken. And only 6% of the actual workforce overall, but it's double of what they represent in government. So our sisters work a lot in the government, and the government, there's a lot of things that, again, not because of AI, but a lot of things in the government. Governments are trying to become smaller. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing either, because I think that there are too many taxes and too much government waste. But I talked about that before. But I think that where AI is going, we have to think about that for the general society of humanity. And again, it goes back to, if you have kids right now, we have to start looking at that and saying, okay, in order to prepare your kids, we have to be extremely realistic and detailed as to where you're going to fit in society, because society is constantly changing. And what you're going to do to sustain yourself, better figure it out, because, you know, getting where you fit in, AI is going to be a bloodbath, I believe. And I think the more we talk about it, I'm optimistic, because hopefully there'll be some solutions. But I think right now, I think people are a little bit asleep on it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, hit that. It's the Crucial Convo Podcast. I'll talk to you in a minute. Peace.